Hey guys, Jeffries here and welcome back to F1 2015. Now today's episode we're actually going to be looking at a different race to the Malaysia Grand Prix, which is the second race in the calendar, but I thought I'd just show you how I did. So actually I qualified 18th on the grid, which wasn't particularly good. I had some alright qualifying laps, but I just couldn't quite find the speed. Then when the actual race came along, I actually got up into 13th place. And that was without pit stops being involved. I managed to overtake 5 cars, and I was really happy. And then Pastel Maldonado sideswiped me into the barrier, and as I bounced back onto the track, Perez shunted me, and for some reason it penalised me and Perez but not Maldonado. So you can see it's flashing on the timed column there. Every now and then it says plus 5 seconds. I got a 5-second race penalty for that incident, even though neither of the crashes were actually my fault. So I'm not very happy about that. I feel like I've been cheated there slightly. But I'm not going to complain too much because I finished 16th. That is 2 places above where I qualified, and overall I'm fairly happy with that as a performance. It's only the second race of the calendar. As you can see, I'm second from bottom in the overall driver standings, which isn't particularly good. But we'll gloss over that, we'll move on, because now we're going into the third race of the calendar, and I really want to guess what race it is, but I always get it wrong. So we'll just, I think it's China, that's the one. We're going into China. So now let's actually go to China. Keep all the settings as they are, fairly happy with it at the moment. So we're just going to go into the Chinese Grand Prix, and we're going to see how well we will do in first practice. As you know, it's a half an hour practice session. We're not going to be out there for the full half hour. And actually, whilst we're waiting for this to load, I'm going to talk to you about the scheduling for this series, because I had a brainwave. I had a genius idea, which I can't believe I didn't think about at the start. So last week was the Australian Grand Prix, and we had an episode Monday, we had an episode Wednesday, and we had an episode Friday. This week, you might have noticed that this is the practice episode, but it's out on the Friday, and that's because practice in the Grand Prix takes place on the Friday, qualifying takes place on the Saturday, and the race takes place on the Sunday. So we're going to follow that exact mould for this. So there we go, that was a quick introduction to the Chinese Grand Prix track. I like the look of this track actually, there's some really long straights and there's some real tight bends as well. But yeah, hopefully you guys like the idea that I've got for practice on the Friday, qualifying on the Saturday, and then the race on the Sunday. It does mean that if you're not necessarily interested in the practice episode, then you know which day to avoid. Same for qualifying, and of course same for the race. Now, we've got some cars just starting to go out on the track. I'm going to have a look to see which cars they are. That's probably not the best place to see. So Bottas is out there. I think that was Rosberg is out there, and Massa, I believe, is out there. So now looks like a good time to go out. There's 4 cars out at the moment. It will probably get busier as I go. But we're going to be one of the first cars out. So as it said there, there's a lack of rubber on the track, which means grip will be a little bit all over the place. But here we go. Right behind the Red Bull. Is that, or is that a Toro Rosso? It's hard to tell. That's a Toro Rosso. Which, for those of you who don't know, Toro Rosso is Red Bull in Spanish or Italian. Oh god. either Spanish or Italian. So it's basically Red Bull's feeder team. They're the only team I'm aware of to actually have two teams in a championship. Because you got like Mercedes supply engines and Ferrari supply engines, but they're not technically teams. They're not directly involved with the team that they're supplying the engines to. So it is a bit of a difference, but I think it's a cool idea, actually, Toro Rosso. It's like the driver academy for Red Bull. Okay, so far, I like this track. Oh, we lost a bit of grip there. So we've got these little tight corners, which I'm getting used to tight corners now, and I'm actually getting quite good at them, if I do say so myself. We're warming up our tyres quite nicely. We're going around these corners quite nicely. And the last race was a real eye-opener for me, because in Australia I struggled quite a bit to sort of keep up with the cars in front. But in Malaysia, I was right up their backsides for most of the race. Even from the start, I had one of the worst possible starts in the race, and yet I was still right behind the cars in front. And I didn't shunt them like I did in Australia, because that wasn't very good. I performed pretty well in the first few corners, and I got a couple of overtaking manoeuvres done and dusted. I avoided crashing, which is always a good thing, and sort of made a good example of myself. It's just a shame that I couldn't keep that going throughout the majority of the race, especially after I crashed, and then it became a real recovery road. And once we got into that stage, it was always going to be difficult. There's a tight right-hander. There we go, and then the tight left-hander. I will get used to this track eventually. It's all about putting the throttle down at the right time, and I think I went a little too early there. There we go, just catch the racing line again. Round this corner. And that's what I like to see. Going through the sectors in green. That's always a good sign. That means I'm doing something right. Just accelerate through that corner. Slow down a little bit for this one, but then accelerate through. We've lost the racing line a little bit. We've actually lost control a little bit as well. There we go. Managed to regain. Ride the curb. Oh, I enjoyed that corner. That was a good corner. We are flying down the straight. DRS is open. That's something else I was using a lot of in Malaysia. I actually forgot where the DRS zone was in Australia. Plus there's that rule, which I actually think is kind of stupid, that you have to be within a second of the car in front in order to use DRS. Which in some ways makes sense, because you use DRS as an overtaking maneuver. But in other ways it doesn't make sense, because say I'm 2 seconds behind the car in front, but the car in front is a second behind the car in front of them. That gives them an advantage over me that I don't have, which I think is a bit unfair. And that is exactly what happened to me in Malaysia. A couple of times I got within 2 seconds of Perez, who was in front of me, and then he opened his DRS, because I think it was Grosjean was just in front of him, and left me in the dust, really. It took me another lap or two to be able to catch up with him again. And in these races, especially as we're only doing 50% of the real life race, we don't have that many laps to try and catch up with other cars. So it's a real nightmare when they open their DRS and just leave you like that. That's why I think it's unfair. If it wasn't for that, then I'd say, you know, fair enough. But maybe they could change it so it's 2 seconds behind, rather than just 1. Just so it gives me a chance to overtake on the straights as well, because Malaysia has 2 very long straights, a bit like China. But actually I'm doing okay around this track. I'm doing very okay. I'm starting to catch up with the car in front. My team are encouraging me to come into the pits and change the setup of the car, but actually I like this setup. I think this will do me well for the weekend. There's Maldonado. I've got a bone to pick with him. The little shunter. No, he's pitting. Coward! Face me like a man next time. Look at that, I'm setting some good lap times here. I'm the 3rd fastest. Only Hamilton and Vettel are faster than me at the moment. I don't know how many cars are out on track, but that's pretty good if the 2 best racers out there at the moment, in fact the 2 best racers there have been in F1 for a few years now, the fact that they're the only 2 that are faster than me, I'm pleased with that. Of course I don't know how much fuel they're carrying, that could be a factor. I definitely get faster in the second half of races, that is something that I noticed both in Australia and in Malaysia. Definitely a recurring theme. This car does improve as the fuel gets burnt. Really struggling to keep the line with these corners here. Yeah, I need to pit again within the next 2 laps. So I think I might pit after this lap. In fact, I'll do this lap, then I'll do a cool down lap, and then I'll pit. That sounds logical. Because I'm going a little bit slow through this sector. Slower than I'd like. But I could still put a good time in. We got a DRS zone coming up. There it is. See the back wing in the mirror there opening. I always forget what DRS stands for. It's something something spoiler, I believe. I always forget. I used to know it, exactly what it meant, and now I keep forgetting. Not good. Yeah, that was a slower, much slower time there. I am still currently the 3rd fastest. It would be cool if I could qualify in a really high up position. I'd like to finish top 10 if possible, but somewhere between 10th and 15th I'd be quite happy with. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Because that's the thing about Marussia. I think the car itself isn't actually that bad. It's got a Ferrari engine, which to me suggests that it's got an awful lot of power just waiting to be put out there. I think the problem with Marussia is they can't afford a top quality standard of driver. So they're kind of like the intro to F1 team for young drivers, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. Some young drivers are good. Vettel, for example, is a very good young driver, and he was the youngest winner of a Grand Prix when he first started at Red Bull. But I think even if you want good young drivers, you still have to be sort of top of the rich list in order to be able to afford them, because Red Bull aren't a poor team, and they managed to get Vettel. And now they've got Danny Ricciardo as well, who's another good young driver. So I think Marussia themselves, they struggle with experienced young drivers. And I think that's one of their big problems. The car itself is actually pretty good. Oh, there's my inexperience coming into play. Definitely going to pit on this lap. There's no chance of getting a better lap time in now. Oh my god, this is one of the worst pit entrances I think I've ever seen. So yeah, 1:46 was my best time. And as you see, Hamilton was 1:45. So I'm only 1.2 seconds slower than Hamilton. And again, I'm really pleased with that. That's a very good time indeed. Very good time. I'll have to see at the end of practice just where I finish exactly. But for now, I'm very happy with 3rd. I know I won't finish 3rd. If I do, I'll be very surprised. So how long have we got left of practice? Let's see. 19 minutes. So I'm actually gonna end this episode here. When we come back next time, we'll be qualifying, of course. I'm gonna do a few more practice laps just to learn the track that little bit better, so that when we come to qualifying, we can go out there, do some warm-up laps, and then go straight into the flying laps, and try and get as many flying laps in as possible to really get the car ready, and also get as high up the grid as possible for the actual race. So, thank you very much, guys, for watching. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, be sure to click the subscribe button. If you have already subscribed to my channel, then thank you for your continued support. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and until tomorrow, I will see you soon.